She clenched her fists at the chilling footage, half fearing the horse's midnight ritual would upend her world. If anyone else discovered this impossible secret, the entire ranch could be torn apart. Midnight had fallen over the sprawling countryside, draping the quiet ranch in a veil of silver moonlight. A soft breeze whispered through the oak trees, and the barn's wooden beams let out tired groans as they settled in the darkness. For most of the animals in Fairwood stables, night brought a familiar rhythm of rest, but rumors had begun to stir among the ranch hands. Strange noises echoed from the barn long after everyone left, and tools were found in odd places come sunrise. Some insisted it was nothing but wind rattling through dusty rafters. Others claimed they heard gentle hoofbeats pacing the stalls, as if a restless spirit were wandering about. Yet nobody could offer a solid explanation, and it remained a mystery, one that would soon capture everyone's imagination. Across the gravel driveway stood a modest cottage, its lights dimmed except for a single lamp burning in the front room. Inside, Lisa Parker, the head trainer, sat hunched over a stack of notes. She'd spent the day trying to solve a puzzling series of mishaps: feed bins left open, stall doors unlatched, and even a strange pile of horse blankets draped over the fence as if they'd been tossed there on purpose. The pattern made no sense. Could one of the stable hands be playing pranks? She toyed with the idea, but the staff was small and dedicated. Nobody seemed the sort to sneak around at night. Besides, the footprints left in the soft dirt were unmistakably equine. That meant a horse was roaming free, doing who knew what beneath the cover of darkness. Lisa was not one to buy into superstition. She believed in concrete evidence and hands-on solutions, so she decided to catch the nocturnal troublemaker in the act. The following afternoon, she installed a small camera in the barn's rafters, angled perfectly to capture any movement in the central aisle. If a horse was truly slipping out of its stall, she intended to see how and why. Most likely, she figured, a latch had broken, or someone forgot to secure a door. She told no one about her plan. Should the culprit catch wind of her scheme, assuming it was a person, it might vanish for good. But deep down, she suspected the hoofprints didn't lie. Something unusual was going on. By 9 in the evening, the barn was quiet. The horses, each in their own stall, gave soft snorts or rustled in the straw as they drifted off to sleep. Lisa walked the aisle, checking the newly reinforced latches one by one. She paused at the stall of the ranch's most peculiar resident, a sleek black gelding named Jax. Though not the largest or the fastest, Jax possessed a keen intelligence that often surprised people. He could unhook gates by nibbling at the chains, and had even once learned how to turn on a water spigot, flooding the wash rack. Lisa wondered if he might be behind these nighttime escapades. But Jax regarded her calmly, blinking those dark eyes as if to say, "You won't find anything amiss here." With a small laugh, she slid the latch into place and stepped away. Night fell, and an otherworldly silence settled over the stables. Outside, the moon climbed higher, illuminating the weathered planks of the barn. Hours trickled by, the camera's tiny red light capturing every second in silent vigil. Then around 1 in the morning, the soft glow of the moon caught a hint of motion. A single stall door eased open, almost too quietly to notice. From its shadows emerged the unmistakable silhouette of a horse. It slipped into the aisle without a sound, its hooves muffled by layers of old hay. Had anyone been there to witness it, they might have questioned their own eyes, for the movement seemed more like a whisper than a clatter. But the camera recorded every step. The horse paused at the feed room door, which was secured by a sliding bar. Lowering its head, it expertly tugged at the bar with its lips. A gentle clink sounded as the bar gave way, and soon the door swung open. The horse nosed inside, rummaging for several minutes before withdrawing to the aisle again. It carried something in its mouth that glinted in the camera's lens, a small grooming brush. Carefully, the horse trotted to another stall and pressed the brush between the rails, as if leaving a gift for its occupant. With that task done, the horse returned to the feed room, retrieving an apple and setting it outside a different stall. It was as if the mysterious visitor was making rounds of kindness, delivering little tokens to the other horses. Next, the horse moved to the tack area, its head tilted in curiosity at the saddles and bridles hanging on pegs. Sorting through a pile of old reins, it appeared to find a piece of twine, which it then dropped near a stable cat dozing in a corner. The cat stirred, eyed the string, and promptly began to bat it around. Throughout this entire scene, the intruder never made a single neigh or whinny, never tried to bolt or cause damage. Instead, it behaved like a gentle caretaker, making sure each friend had a treat or a toy. If Lisa or any of the ranch hands had stood there, they would have rubbed their eyes in disbelief, certain they were dreaming. Eventually, with the chores finished, the horse slipped quietly back down the aisle, pushing its own stall door open from inside, a trick that must have taken hours of practice. It disappeared into the stall, and moments later, the latch clicked behind it. For a few seconds, the camera revealed nothing but stillness. Then all movement ceased. The barn returned to its usual hush, as if no visitor had ever disturbed the night. Only the scattered evidence, an apple for one horse, a brush for another, and a toy for the cat, remained. The camera blinked on, oblivious to the remarkable display it had just captured. Lisa woke at dawn, unaware of the wonders that had transpired while she slept. Yawning, she pulled on her boots, grabbed her phone, and strode toward the barn. Her plan was simple: check the footage, confirm her suspicions, and confront whichever stable hand or clever horse had orchestrated these odd happenings. The crisp morning air prickled her skin, and the aroma of fresh hay greeted her as she slid open the barn's large door. A sense of anticipation fluttered in her stomach. Part of her was excited at the thought of unveiling a puzzle. Another part worried she might find nothing at all. Perhaps the nights of chaos had been nothing more than chance occurrences. Still, she refused to let her curiosity go unanswered. Inside, she noticed little had changed, though a few anomalies tugged at her attention. One stall had a grooming brush sticking halfway between the rails. Another had a half-eaten apple lying near the entrance, one that certainly hadn't been there at closing time. The barn cat batted happily at a length of twine near a stack of feed sacks. Lisa's heart quickened. These were new developments. Racing to the feed room, she found the sliding bar unlatched. Her pulse pounded as she realized no one could have opened it without her noticing. Her staff was small and trustworthy, and she'd personally set every lock. Whatever had happened, it was real, and she was determined to see it with her own eyes on the footage. Hoisting her laptop onto a nearby bale of hay, she retrieved the camera's memory card. The data took a few moments to load, each second stretching her patience to the limit. Then the screen flickered to life, revealing the stables bathed in dim, grainy night vision. She fast-forwarded the footage until the timestamp read 01:00 a.m., then slowed it to normal speed. Her eyes widened at what she saw. The barn's main aisle was empty, a silent corridor. Suddenly, movement. The door of Jax's stall crept open. Out stepped the black gelding, not in a rush, but with an almost casual confidence. Lisa's jaw dropped. She'd suspected Jax was clever, but this, she watched, transfixed, as Jax calmly pushed open the feed room door, rummaged about, and made his rounds, leaving gifts or treats for nearly every horse. and even entertaining the barn cat. The video was surreal, capturing him balancing apples in his mouth, delicately placing them in front of stalls. The soft glow of the overhead light revealed his glossy coat and the careful concentration in his eyes. It wasn't random. He seemed purposeful, almost gentle, as though fulfilling a secret duty only he understood. When he finally returned to his own stall and swung the door shut behind him, Lisa paused the video. Her mind whirled with amazement, admiration, and a slight pinch of disbelief. Jax was no ordinary horse. She had known that, of course, but she'd never guessed he spent his nights caring for his stablemates in this extraordinary way. In the next few moments, disbelief gave way to a giddy sense of wonder. She replayed the footage, searching for clues that might explain how Jax had learned to manipulate the latches so dexterously. It must have taken trial and error, perhaps months of quiet experimentation. Jax had waited for the ranch to sleep, testing the boundaries only when no one was around. He must have explored every corner of the barn, memorizing which levers to push, which doors could be nudged from inside. And he'd done it all without spooking the other horses or alerting any of the humans. Lisa felt a surge of pride for the gelding, mixed with a humbling realization. Even after years of working closely with horses, there were still realms of their intelligence and compassion she had yet to comprehend. She closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and stepped into the aisle. Several horses poked their heads over stall doors, nickering softly as if asking for their breakfast. Jax stood among them, as quiet and unassuming as ever, his big, dark eyes observing her with an innocent stare. If she hadn't seen the video, she would have had no reason to suspect that he spent his nights roaming the barn like a caretaker. Approaching Jax's stall, Lisa gave him a slow, grateful rub on the forehead. "You're full of surprises," she murmured with a smile. She wondered if she should share the footage with the rest of the staff or keep it private for a bit longer, hoping to protect Jax's midnight adventures from turning into a spectacle. Yet she also felt this story was too remarkable to hide away. "Good morning," she said, feeding Jax a small carrot. He munched on it contentedly, blinking at her with eyes that seemed to shine with quiet satisfaction. Lisa felt her heart flutter with excitement for what might come next. The stables had seen their share of drama, but this discovery changed everything. She knew she had to plan her next step carefully. Would she let Jax continue roaming or try to lock down the barn for safety? She found herself torn between curiosity, what else might he be up to, and the responsibility she held for every animal here. One thing was certain: the simple farmland nights had turned into a world of possibility, all thanks to the clever horse who snuck out to spread small acts of kindness when no one was looking. Early the next morning, Lisa walked into the barn with the camera footage still fresh in her mind. She couldn't stop replaying the moment Jax slid his stall door shut like a practiced escape artist. Even so, she hesitated to share the evidence with the rest of the staff. Part of her worried that if too many people found out, Jax's nighttime habit might turn into a spectacle. Another part of her wanted to see if he would do it again. She started her morning rounds as usual, greeting each horse with a gentle pat or a soft word. The stable cats wove around her ankles, mewling for attention. Everything felt normal, yet Lisa's gaze kept drifting to Jax's stall. She found him nibbling on a mouthful of hay, looking every bit the innocent gelding. He flicked his ears in her direction, then went back to chewing. Lisa smiled quietly, recalling how stealthy he had been on camera. At midday, the stable hands gathered to discuss the latest disruptions. Buckets had been moved from one end of the aisle to another. A few halters were discovered hanging in the wrong places. Several workers assumed someone was simply playing a prank. Others believed an unusually smart raccoon might be wandering in. Lisa remained silent, though her heart pounded with the secret she carried. She decided that for now, she would keep Jax's feats between herself and the camera's lens. That evening, when most of the horses were turned out in the pasture, Lisa took Jax aside for a quiet grooming session. She wanted to see if there was anything special about his stall that made it easier to open. Examining the door, she found no obvious faults. The latch seemed sturdy, so Jax must have learned the trick of sliding it open. She also noticed a small pattern of teeth marks near the metal bar, confirming he'd tested it often. Jax watched her intently, almost as though he recognized she was piecing together his puzzle. In a gentle voice, she said, "I know your secret, but I'm not angry. I just wish I could understand why you do it." Jax lowered his head, exhaling softly against her arm. She felt a curious warmth at his gesture, a spark of connection that told her this horse had a heart full of empathy. Perhaps he wandered at night because he sensed the others needed comfort, or maybe he simply liked the thrill of exploration. That night, Lisa repeated her plan. She locked every stall meticulously and checked each door twice. Then she returned to her cottage and waited until the ranch fell silent. Around midnight, she slipped back into the barn, though this time she didn't rely on the camera alone. She tiptoed into a vacant storage loft above the central aisle, hiding behind some old bales of straw to watch from a concealed vantage point. The air smelled of dust and hay, and her heart pounded in her ears as she settled in. For a long while, nothing happened. The barn lay silent, disturbed only by the occasional shuffle of hooves. Lisa began to wonder if Jax somehow sensed her presence. Then, just as she considered giving up, she heard the faint click of metal. Her pulse quickened. Peering over the edge of the loft, she saw Jax's stall door swing open. The black gelding emerged into the moonlit aisle, head raised, ears alert. Lisa held her breath, stunned by how quietly he moved across the hay-strewn floor. Jax headed straight to a nearby stall, pressing his muzzle against the latch. The occupant, a dappled mare named Willow, nickered softly in greeting. Next, he turned to the feed room and nudged the door. Lisa had bolted it earlier, but Jax still managed to inch it open, as if he knew a secret angle or pressure point that would loosen the latch. He disappeared inside, rummaging long enough to raise Lisa's curiosity. Then he returned with a single carrot clenched in his teeth, placing it gently near Willow's stall. The mare stretched her neck through the rails, nickering in gratitude, as Jax nudged the carrot within reach. Lisa felt tears prick at her eyes. She'd never seen a horse show such deliberate kindness to another. It was as though Jax took it upon himself to be the barn's guardian angel after dark. He wasn't simply pilfering treats for personal gain, he was sharing them. The quietness of his actions, the gentleness he displayed, every bit of it confounded and moved her. Jax's mission continued. He moseyed down the aisle, checking on each stall. Sometimes he left a brush, sometimes a bit of hay, small tokens that, to a human eye, seemed random but to the horses held significance. By the time he finished, it was close to 2 in the morning. He paused at the barn cat curled in a corner, dropping a piece of twine just inches from its paws. The cat swatted at the string, meowing contentedly. Then, in a final grand gesture, Jax returned to his stall and secured the door behind him. Lisa waited until the barn was silent once more before easing down from the loft. She moved slowly, her mind swimming with what she had witnessed. No one would believe her if she just told them. They would demand proof, yet she had proof, hours of footage, plus her first-hand account. The question was how to share it responsibly. Part of her feared that the barn would be overrun with journalists or gawkers if word got out too soon. Jax deserved to roam in peace, to continue his secret acts of compassion. In the days that followed, Lisa noticed subtle changes among the horses. They seemed calmer, more at ease, as though Jax's nightly visits bolstered their sense of security. Willow, the dappled mare, no longer stomped anxiously in her stall. Another horse with a history of restlessness started sleeping more soundly. Even the barn cat had become friendlier, trailing after Jax during turnout. These transformations reminded Lisa of how connected the animals really were. Jax, with his covert kindness, served as a stabilizing force in the stable. Despite the quieter nights, Lisa couldn't keep the secret forever. One afternoon, Jason, the ranch owner, stopped by to deliver some new supplies. He asked Lisa about the improved demeanor among the horses, noting that even the older geldings seemed livelier. Lisa hesitated, then decided to show him the recordings. She braced herself for skepticism, but as Jason watched Jax's midnight escapades, his eyes grew wide. "This horse is unbelievable," he murmured. "He's taking care of them." Lisa nodded, relieved she wasn't alone in her awe. Word spread quickly once Jason got involved. He insisted on telling a few trusted veterinarians, hoping they could shed light on Jax's behavior. Some experts speculated that Jax had an unusually high level of social intelligence. Others believed his past might reveal clues. Perhaps he was raised among therapy animals or taught to respond empathetically to distress. But no definitive explanation emerged, just a swirl of theories. Meanwhile, Jax remained untroubled by the attention, going about his days just as any horse would, grazing in the pasture with the others. Curiosity deepened into excitement, and soon small gatherings formed in the barn at night, quietly watching from behind the stalls. Jax seemed aware of the onlookers, sometimes pausing to peer in their direction, but he never spooked or retreated. Instead, he carried on, distributing brushes or treats. It became a nightly ritual for a handful of staff who dubbed themselves Jax's Midnight Club. Though Lisa worried the audience might disrupt his routine, Jax never broke stride. He accepted their presence as if it were inevitable, his focus always on his stablemates. Yet as more people became aware of Jax's exploits, Lisa sensed a ripple of concern beneath the amazement. What if an unexpected visitor arrived, a journalist with a camera crew, or a thrill seeker hoping to capitalize on the story? Even well-intentioned crowds could frighten the horses. Determined to protect the stable's peace, Lisa began contemplating ways to handle the growing interest. Though she had no desire to muzzle the truth of Jax's extraordinary acts, she couldn't bear the thought of turning the barn into a circus. One thing was clear: Jax's newfound fame would force them all to reckon with the balance between sharing a miracle and safeguarding its gentle heart. Over the next few weeks, the hush of night in Fairwood stables grew more fragile. Word of Jax's midnight rituals leaked beyond the ranch, slowly at first, then with momentum. A neighbor told a friend, who told a cousin, who posted on social media about the magical horse. Within days, the story ballooned. Lisa began receiving phone calls from strangers who claimed they had to see this remarkable animal. Journalists emailed with requests for interviews, some even showing up at the ranch gate unannounced, video cameras in tow. Each time, Lisa found herself caught between pride in Jax and a desire to protect him from prying eyes. One rainy afternoon, she stood by the front entrance, confronting two local reporters who'd arrived with microphones. She insisted that the stable was private property and that Jax was not a spectacle to be gawked at. The men seemed disappointed, but took her refusal graciously enough, filming a brief segment outside the gate. Though they departed without a confrontation, the encounter left Lisa uneasy. She imagined a flood of curiosity seekers might soon pour onto the property, scaring the horses and upsetting the balance Jax had created. To stave off unwanted attention, Lisa and Jason convened a staff meeting. They discussed security measures like hanging a sign that read, "No trespassing, horses at rest," and installing motion detectors near the entrance. One of the ranch hands suggested setting designated visiting hours, but Jason shook his head at that idea. "We can't turn Jax into an exhibit," he said firmly. "He's just living his life, and I won't have a crowd disrupting our stables after dark." The final decision was to maintain a polite distance from the media. If people insisted on visiting, they would be offered a general tour of the farm, no special midnight glimpses. As each night passed, Jax's routine held steady. He roamed the barn, delivering his small tokens or gentle nudges of reassurance. Lisa noticed that one older mare, Clara, seemed especially drawn to Jax's presence. Clara had been dealing with joint issues, often requiring pain medication, but since Jax began slipping in and out of her stall at odd hours, she'd become calmer and even regained a touch of her former energy. Lisa found Clara trotting around the paddock one morning with an extra spark, and when she drew near, the mare nickered as if telling her that Jax's visits were as good as any remedy. Encouraged by Clara's improvement, Lisa collaborated with the ranch vet to see if Jax's nightly visits might help other horses struggling with chronic anxiety or physical discomfort. The vet, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Taylor, was intrigued by the notion of equine companionship aiding in recovery. She set up a series of observations, taking careful notes on the horse's behavior. Sure enough, the data pointed to a decline in restlessness among nearly all the stable's residents. At night, Jax would check on each stall, occasionally selecting a grooming tool or a treat from the feed room. By day, the horses seemed less jumpy, more inclined to interact with each other peacefully. No one could fully explain it, yet the pattern was undeniable. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of town, rumors twisted into legend. Some claimed Jax could open any lock in the county. Others insisted he was the reincarnation of a legendary therapy horse from decades past. A few skeptics dismissed the tale altogether, calling it a hoax fabricated by gullible ranch hands. Regardless of opinions, the number of curious visitors rose with each rumor. Parents came with children, hoping for a glimpse of Jax performing his odd tasks. Lisa and her team struggled to maintain order, turning away most and giving gentle tours to others during the daylight hours. Their constant worry was that someone would sneak in at night. One evening, that fear nearly became reality. As Lisa made her final rounds before bed, she spotted a faint glow behind the barn, a flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. With cautious steps, she crept around the side of the building and discovered two strangers hoisting themselves over the fence. The men clutched a camera and whispered excitedly, oblivious to her approach. Outraged, Lisa demanded they leave, threatening to call the sheriff if they persisted. Startled, they offered stammered apologies, claiming they only wanted to capture footage of the miracle horse. Even after Lisa escorted them off the property, she was left rattled, furious that Jax's safety had been threatened by outsiders hungry for spectacle. The next morning, she and Jason met in his office, a simple room adorned with trophies from past rodeos. "This is getting out of hand," Lisa sighed, massaging her temples. Jason nodded. "I never expected it to blow up like this. We can't keep chasing off intruders every night." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "The question is, how do we protect Jax without stifling him? It's unfair to lock him in a stall all night." Lisa thought of how important Jax's freedom seemed, not just to him, but to the other horses. Confined by extra locks, he might lose the spark that drove him to care for his stablemates. Ultimately, they decided to bring in help from a trusted family friend, Roy, a former police officer who had moved to the countryside years earlier. He agreed to patrol the grounds at night, ensuring any unauthorized visitors stayed away. His presence offered a semblance of security, letting Lisa sleep easier. Of course, Jax's midnight routine went on unabated. Roy, stationed discreetly near the barn, would sometimes glimpse the horse slipping between stalls, as quiet as a shadow. When he told Lisa about the spectacle, his gruff voice held an undertone of awe. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted. "It's like he's on a mission." Lisa chuckled at Roy's wonder. She felt it too. That sense of standing on the edge of a phenomenon no one could fully decode. Yet for all the confusion, it was a beautiful mystery, one that deserved protection. She started entertaining a dream. Maybe Jax could serve as a therapy animal for horses beyond Fairwood Stables someday. If he could bring peace to troubled animals here, who was to say he couldn't help others across the region? The idea flickered in her mind like a beacon of hope, though she had no concrete plans. First, she had to keep him safe from the spotlight. That same afternoon, she was surprised to find a letter in the ranch's mailbox. Inside was a formal invitation from a reputable equine research center in the neighboring county. The letter explained that they had heard fascinating stories about a horse named Jax with unusual abilities, and they hoped to observe him under controlled conditions. They offered an enclosed paddock, specialized equipment, even a stipend for Lisa's time. "In the interest of scientific discovery," they wrote, "we would be honored if you would allow us to document Jax's behavior and consider the broader implications for equine psychology." Lisa's eyes widened. On one hand, it was flattering that professionals valued Jax's story. On the other, she felt a twinge of apprehension, imagining Jax cooped up in a sterile environment like a lab specimen. She took the letter to Jason, who mulled it over. "They mean well," he said. "This could lead to insights that might help thousands of horses." But his voice trailed off. They understood the risk. Once an institution became involved, Jax's life could turn into a research project. Data sheets, clipboards, cameras. How would Jax respond to all that scrutiny? How would the public react? Might the crowds grow even larger, now that scientists were confirming the phenomenon? Lisa pictured Jax's calm eyes, accustomed to caring for others. Could he thrive if pulled from the only home he'd ever known? Lisa and Jason pondered the invitation for days, neither eager to subject Jax to invasive research. Yet they recognized the potential for broader understanding. If Jax's nightly compassion could be documented scientifically, perhaps it would highlight the emotional complexity of horses everywhere. Even so, Lisa worried about the toll it might take on him. Each evening, she observed Jax as he drifted through the barn, distributing small acts of kindness with unwavering dedication. He seemed happiest in motion, ears pricked forward, tail swishing lightly as he moved from stall to stall. The thought of confining him to a sterile test environment made her anxious. She decided to discuss the matter with Dr. Taylor, the veterinarian who had been tracking the horse's improved well-being. Dr. Taylor's eyes lit up when she heard about the research center's interest, but she also shared Lisa's reservations. They walked together along the edge of the pasture, watching Jax and a few other horses graze under a brilliant sunset. The veterinarian admitted that while formal studies could yield invaluable data, the biggest risk was that the process might disrupt Jax's natural behavior. If Jax realized every move was under scrutiny, his nightly rounds might lose their spontaneity or vanish altogether. Lisa agreed wholeheartedly. She and Dr. Taylor paused to observe Jax grooming a younger gelding, gently nibbling at the other horse's withers in a mutual sign of trust. The peaceful image reminded her of how special he truly was, and how easily that magic might be lost if turned into a spectacle. In the end, Dr. Taylor advised caution. "Don't rush into a decision," she said. "Wait until the media frenzy calms. Then maybe you can schedule a controlled observation on your own terms. That way, you keep Jax's welfare at the center of everything." It was a sensible approach. Jason agreed with the plan. He drafted a polite letter to the research center, thanking them for their interest and explaining that the ranch needed time to ensure Jax's comfort. With that, Lisa breathed a momentary sigh of relief. She hoped the delayed response would reduce outside pressure, giving her time to figure out exactly how to protect Jax's well-being while sharing his story responsibly. At night, she resumed her quiet watch, finding endless wonder in the gentle way he placed brushes beside certain stalls or offered a comforting muzzle to uneasy horses. Each gesture felt like a small miracle. Still, the problem of curious visitors persisted. Roy's presence helped, patrolling the perimeter with a flashlight and a friendly but firm manner. Yet more than once, he caught people sneaking along the fences, cameras at the ready. One night, Lisa woke to raised voices and rushed outside to discover Roy ushering a group of 3 teenagers off the property. They'd come from a neighboring town, determined to film Jax for a viral video. Though they apologized when confronted, Lisa could see the longing on their faces. She couldn't entirely blame them. If she heard rumors of such a horse, she'd be curious too. After that incident, the staff devised new rules for the barn area at night. Signs were posted, gates were locked earlier, and Roy expanded his patrol route. Even the horses seemed more alert as they settled in each evening, as though sensing the added tension. Through it all, Jax never changed his routine. He would rest calmly until the wee hours, then slip out into the aisle. Lisa often joked that no fence or lock could hinder him if he truly wished to explore, and yet he never once tried to leave the barn. The outside world held no appeal for him. One mild evening, Lisa lingered by Jax's stall with a heavy heart. She glanced at the carefully latched door and wondered if she should reinforce it further. It felt contradictory to champion his freedom, yet also consider limiting it. Her thoughts churned as she remembered the time she'd witnessed Jax consoling skittish mares or coaxing an older horse into trusting the human hand. The memory of Clara's recovery glowed in her mind, a testament to Jax's gentle influence. Locking him in felt wrong, but so did leaving him vulnerable to the possibility of prying visitors. A solution remained elusive. Suddenly, Jason appeared beside her, wearing a sympathetic expression. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out," he said, his voice low. "We just need time." Lisa nodded, leaning her head against the stall door as Jax peered at them curiously. In that moment, the horse extended his muzzle, brushing Lisa's arm as if to comfort her in return. She felt a tear slip down her cheek, not out of sadness, but from a mix of gratitude and awe. "See," Jason said softly, "he's taken care of everyone else. Maybe he knows you need a little of that too." Touched by Jax's empathy, Lisa resolved to maintain his routine for as long as possible. Over the next few days, she and Jason redoubled their efforts to secure the ranch without confining Jax unduly. Roy adjusted his patrol schedule, sometimes bringing along his grandson, a gentle teenager named David, who loved horses. David became enthralled by Jax, standing quietly in the shadows to watch him creep about in the moonlight. He'd whisper to Lisa how mesmerizing it was to see the horse move so confidently, guided by an instinct that defied explanation. In David's eyes, Jax was something of a hero. Then, late one night, Lisa woke to the sound of pounding on her cottage door. She threw on a robe and hurried to find Roy, breathless and agitated, stammering that someone had broken onto the property again. Her heart lurched with fear. She snatched a flashlight and dashed toward the barn, wind whipping at her hair. The scene that greeted her set her teeth on edge. A truck was parked haphazardly near the barn entrance, headlights casting garish beams across the yard. Two men stood there, scanning the stalls as though searching for something. The tension in the air was electric. Roy caught up, shouting for the intruders to leave. One man lifted a hand in mock surrender. "Easy!" he called out. "We're not here to steal anything. We just want to look at that fancy horse." Lisa strode forward, adrenaline sparking her courage. She positioned herself between them and the barn door. "This is private property," she spat. "You have no right to be here. Get out!" The second man snorted, glancing at the barn as if debating whether to push past her. Lisa's heart hammered, but she refused to yield. She'd protect Jax, no matter what it took. A tense standoff ensued. Roy radioed the local sheriff, who promised to send a patrol car. The intruders muttered curses, half threatening to expose the ranch for hoarding a miracle horse. Lisa suspected they aimed to profit from Jax's story, selling footage or hosting paid tours. Anger boiled within her. She had worked tirelessly to preserve the stable's tranquility, and here were vultures seeking to exploit something beautiful for personal gain. Finally, hearing the wail of distant sirens, the men dashed back into their truck and sped away, gravel spitting beneath their tires. Lisa collapsed against a fence post, trembling. The sheriff arrived soon after. Though they promised to patrol the area more frequently, Lisa realized they were fighting a tide of growing interest that no gate or sign could fully stop. As dawn broke, she stepped inside the barn, letting the horses nuzzle her hands. Jack stood alert, as though sensing the earlier commotion. His gentle eyes sought hers, and she felt a surge of love and protectiveness. "They won't hurt you," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his muzzle. The horse exhaled softly. Lisa wished she had half his calm in that moment. She inhaled his warm scent, steadied herself, and made a vow. She would protect him forever. The morning after the intruders fled, Lisa woke with the same fierce determination she'd felt in the barn. Though her nerves still buzzed from the confrontation, she forced herself to focus on the horses' needs first. One by one, she led them out to their respective paddocks, checking for any signs of injury or distress. Jax remained calm, trailing behind her like a vigilant shadow. She couldn't help but sense that he, too, had been on edge the previous night, as though he'd caught the scent of unfamiliar humans. When she reached his paddock, he stepped forward and rested his muzzle against her shoulder. Lisa breathed in the earthy smell of his coat, grateful for the unspoken solidarity he offered. News of the break-in spread among the ranch staff, and soon everyone was trading worried remarks about how far people might go to capture Jax's story. Even the stable hands, who'd initially rolled their eyes at the idea of a miracle horse, began expressing concern. It wasn't just about Jax, it was about the harmony of Fairwood stables. If strangers kept barging in, the entire operation risked chaos. Jason quietly consulted with the sheriff, hoping for more frequent patrols. Though the sheriff was sympathetic, he was stretched thin, covering a large rural district. Lisa realized they'd have to rely on their own vigilance to keep the barn safe. That afternoon, a trailer rumbled up the dusty driveway, drawing everyone's attention. A slender woman jumped out and waved at Lisa. "Hope I'm in the right place," she called. "I'm Karen Harris, Dr. Taylor sent me." Lisa remembered the vet mentioning a trainer who specialized in rehabilitating rescued horses. Curious, she stepped forward and introduced herself, leading Karen around the property. As they strolled past the paddocks, Karen spotted Jax grazing near the fence line. Her eyes lit up. "So that's the one everyone's talking about," she said softly, smiling as though she already believed the rumors. Lisa explained a bit about Jax's nightly habits, careful not to dramatize. She emphasized that more than anything, he seemed deeply attuned to the well-being of other horses. Karen listened intently, nodding in fascination. "You know, I've seen some incredible equine behavior," she remarked, "but I've never heard of a horse that actually leaves its stall to nurture others on his own accord. If half of what people say is true, he could be a once-in-a-lifetime find." Lisa felt a sudden protectiveness surge. "He's not a novelty," she replied, her tone cautious. "We just want him to live peacefully." Karen's smile turned reassuring. "I'm on your side. Horses like Jack's do best when they feel safe. I'm actually here to discuss a new arrival. I have a mare named Marley who's been through severe neglect. Dr. Taylor believes your stable might be the perfect place for her recovery, especially if Jax's influence is what people claim it to be." Lisa's surprise gave way to a cautious optimism. Helping a rescued horse was aligned with everything Fairwood Stables stood for, and maybe, just maybe, Marley could benefit from the same quiet empathy Jax showed his stablemates. After all, Clara's recovery was proof that Jax's presence had genuine impact. They walked on toward the barn, where Karen slid the trailer door open to reveal a gaunt bay mare. Marley's ribs stood out starkly, and her eyes flicked nervously from side to side. Lisa's heart clenched. She'd seen neglected horses before, but the sorrow etched into Marley's stance tugged at her. With soft murmurs, Karen coaxed Marley down the ramp. The mare trembled, attempting to place her hooves carefully as though she feared the ground might collapse beneath her. Lisa noticed a cluster of small scars around Marley's muzzle and legs, hinting at a painful history. "Easy, girl," Karen whispered. "You're safe here." Lisa held the lead rope, guiding Marley onto soft dirt. The mare jerked, spooked by a gust of wind that rattled the barn's corrugated roof. Lisa steadied her, speaking in a low, soothing tone. Gradually, Marley's breathing settled. Karen offered a gentle pat along the mare's neck, explaining that Dr. Taylor had treated her for various infections. Now Marley just needed time, good nutrition, and a calm environment to mend her spirit. That he, and perhaps some intangible kindness that only Jax seemed able to provide. After settling Marley in a quiet stall far from the main aisle, Lisa left her to rest. She spent the rest of the day discussing feed regimens and gentle exercise plans with Karen. They wanted Marley on a schedule that would rebuild her strength without overwhelming her fragile system. Meanwhile, Jax remained in his paddock, unaware of the new arrival, at least for the moment. Lisa found herself wondering if, by nightfall, he would sense Marley's presence and extend his usual goodwill. As dusk approached, the air cooled, carrying the scent of grass and distant pine trees. Karen planned to stay overnight at a small motel nearby, checking in the next morning to assess Marley's adjustment. Before she left, she placed a reassuring hand on Lisa's arm. "I can tell how much you care for these horses. Marley is lucky to be here." Lisa nodded, a spark of hope mingling with her persistent worries about security and media attention. At least now, the ranch had another compelling reason to remain a sanctuary, not a sideshow. That evening, Lisa performed her usual routine, double-checking doors, verifying that Roy was stationed near the property's perimeter, and ensuring each horse had fresh water. When she came to Marley's stall, she paused to watch the mare nibble half-heartedly at her hay. In the adjacent stall stood Willow, one of Jax's favorites, who occasionally lifted her head to peer at the newcomer through the slats. The barn's comforting hum enveloped them, soft breathing, the shuffle of hooves in straw, the gentle nickers as horses settled in. Long after midnight, Lisa awoke from a restless sleep, drawn by the thought of Jax's nightly meanderings. She slipped from her cottage and crept to her usual vantage point in the loft. There, in the darkness, she spied the outline of Jax's stall. At first, all was still, but soon she heard the faint click of metal. Jax eased out, pausing as if to sniff the air. Then he ventured down the aisle, muzzle brushing each stall door in turn, checking on the horses that had grown accustomed to his visits. His movements were quieter than a whisper. When Jax reached Marley's stall, he hesitated. The mare stirred, startled by his sudden appearance. She pinned her ears but made no aggressive move, merely trembled as though expecting something harsh. Jax stood perfectly still, giving her time to adjust. Lisa caught her breath, riveted by the delicate moment. Finally, Jax pressed his muzzle between the bars, not forcing contact but offering it. Marley flicked her tail anxiously, her eyes darting around. For a moment, Lisa thought she might lash out. Instead, the mare sniffed Jax's face. A soft exhale followed, almost a sigh of relief. Encouraged, Jax slipped away toward the feed room, deftly sliding open the door. He emerged seconds later with a single carrot, gripping it carefully as he returned to Marley's stall. From where Lisa watched, the gesture was heartbreakingly gentle. Jax placed the carrot on the ground inside her door, then retreated a few steps, as though giving Marley space to decide. Marley eyed the gift warily, her legs tense, but the lure of sweet food overcame her nervousness. She inched forward, grabbed the carrot and devoured it with a hunger that suggested she hadn't tasted anything quite so fresh in ages. Lisa felt tears forming at the corners of her eyes. Never had she witnessed such purposeful empathy in a horse. Plenty of animals developed strong social bonds, but Jax orchestrated these nighttime missions with uncanny thoughtfulness, as if sensing exactly what each stablemate required. That moment sealed Lisa's conviction that bringing Marley here was the right choice. Whatever past torment she'd endured, Jax's presence could guide her toward trust and comfort again. Marley's posture relaxed, her ears pricking forward. She stepped closer to the stall door, almost inviting Jax's company. He obliged, leaning in again and letting her sniff his neck. When she showed no sign of fear, he let out a soft, breathy nicker. The exchange was brief, yet profound. After another minute, Jax moved along, continuing his rounds with the same quiet grace he always displayed. Marley remained at the door, ears tuned to his retreating hoofbeats. Lisa believed she saw a spark of curiosity in the mare's eyes, an openness she hadn't had before. As Jax disappeared into his stall to conclude his rounds, Lisa realized how fiercely she would defend his ability to roam free. No matter how many reporters or curious intruders appeared, she would shield Jax's sanctuary. He was changing lives here, Marley's most of all. The stable might face challenges, but with each purposeful stride, Jax reminded her that compassion could thrive even under scrutiny. She climbed down from the loft, returning to her cottage with renewed determination. In her heart, she made another vow, to protect not just Jax, but every fragile horse that found its way to Fairwood stables, seeking the warmth of a second chance. By the time dawn broke over the ranch, Lisa's heart was still awash in the memory of Jax's gentle interaction with Marley. She rose early, as always, to start morning chores, yet her step felt lighter. After checking on the other horses and making sure everyone had fresh hay and water, she arrived at Marley's stall. The mare, who would normally shy away from sudden movements, greeted Lisa with a watchful glance rather than outright fear. Even that small shift gave Lisa hope. Karen arrived soon after, having spent the night at a motel. The trainer's boots kicked up dust as she hurried into the barn, clearly eager to see how Marley had fared. Peering into the stall, she noted that the mare's breathing was calmer and her stance slightly more relaxed. "She looks less tense," Karen observed, stroking Marley's neck through the open half door. "It's a good sign. Maybe your mysterious Jax has worked some magic already," Lisa smiled. Debating whether to share her secret observations from the loft, she decided that Karen should know the truth. So, as Marley sniffed curiously at the trainer's pocket, likely in search of another carrot, Lisa recounted how Jax had slipped through the barn at midnight, gently introducing himself to Marley. She described the scene in quiet detail, the gift of the carrot, the soft exchange of breath. Karen's eyes widened in wonder. "You witnessed that?" she asked, incredulous. "He really just brought it to her?" Lisa nodded. "I've seen him do it for others, but with Marley it felt especially deliberate, like he knew she was new and needed reassurance." Karen slowly reached a hand out to Marley, who accepted the contact without recoiling. A faint smile touched Karen's lips. "This place is something special," she murmured, "and so is he." Over the following week, Lisa and Karen worked in tandem to ease Marley into a healthy routine. The mare still startled at loud noises, but she no longer cowered when someone entered her stall. She ate more steadily, her dull coat gradually regaining a subtle sheen. Every so often, Karen or Lisa would catch glimpses of Jack standing near Marley's stall during the day, as though he were silently checking on her. Even the barn cat seemed drawn to Marley, curling up on a nearby hay bale whenever she rested. A quiet sort of harmony was taking root. Outside Fairwood stables, though, the world remained fixated on the miracle horse. More reporters came calling, only to be turned away at the gates. Roy caught 2 more trespassers scoping out the barn at night. The men claimed to be horse enthusiasts wanting a private viewing, but their eager talk of capturing footage told a different story. Each encounter drained Lisa's patience. She'd never courted fame, and she wished fervently that Jax's nightly acts could remain undiscovered, shared only by those who truly cared about his welfare. Worry gnawed at her even during her favorite time of day, the golden late afternoon, when the sun's rays stretched across the paddocks in long, warm bands. She would lean on the fence, watching Jax graze. Sometimes the black gelding would glance up as though sensing her thoughts, his dark eyes calm. Lisa felt that if she lost her focus, Jax's peaceful world could vanish in an instant, devoured by the spectacle of curious crowds. She found herself confiding in Karen late one evening while they both prepared feed buckets. "I'm afraid that if the pressure keeps mounting, we'll have to lock Jax's stall for real, and that would destroy the very thing that makes him who he is." Karen mulled over the statement, pressing the lid onto a bin of sweet feed. "What if you look at it differently?" she suggested. "Instead of waiting for more invasions, maybe you can shape the narrative. Invite a small, trusted group, people you know will respect Jax, to see what he does on his own terms. That might reduce the temptation for others to sneak in." Lisa considered the idea. She wasn't fond of even a small audience witnessing Jax's private rituals. But Karen had a point. Sometimes openness could quell the frenzy better than secrecy. They brought the plan to Jason, who scratched his chin thoughtfully. "A controlled demonstration, with a handful of folks who genuinely appreciate horses," he said, sounding unconvinced, yet intrigued. "Could work, but it has to be on our turf, with our rules." He turned to Lisa. "You've seen how Jax behaves at night. Think he'd do the same if people were standing quietly by?" Lisa shrugged, uncertain. "He's never seemed shy about observers, at least from the loft. But a larger group might change things." Jason took a moment, then nodded. "We'll keep it very small, just a few local horse owners we trust, plus maybe a representative from Dr. Taylor's clinic. No news cameras, no big announcements. If Jax goes about his business, great. If he doesn't, they'll still respect him. We make it clear that the barn is his space." Cautiously, they set a date for a low-key night watch, selecting individuals who shared a gentle appreciation for equine welfare. Roy would still patrol the perimeter, ensuring no unexpected visitors popped in. Lisa spent the days leading up to it with her stomach twisted in knots. She feared Jax might feel scrutinized and abandon his rounds entirely. Yet she also knew that controlling the flow of honest information was likely better than letting rumors run rampant. When the evening arrived, the stable air seemed charged with tension. Marley ate her dinner quietly. Clara and Willow dozed, and Jack stood content in his stall. One by one, the invited guests slipped through the barn doors. A retired couple who bred horses responsibly, a soft-spoken woman from the veterinarian's office, Karen and Dr. Taylor herself. They spoke in hushed tones, forming a small semicircle in the aisle, while Lisa explained how Jax typically ventured out after midnight. By the time the barn lights were dimmed, it was nearly 1 in the morning. They waited in near silence, the only sounds being an occasional snort or shuffle from the horses. Lisa felt every second tick by like an hour, worry creeping in that Jax would sense the gathering and stay put. Then in the corner of her vision, a stall door glided open. Jax emerged, stepping into the aisle with that same measured calm. She heard someone gasp softly. In the darkness, Jax sniffed the air, noticing the cluster of humans. Instead of retreating, he took a few steps closer, as though greeting them. A hush fell over the group. Lisa held her breath. Jax tilted his head, as if gauging their intentions. Karen, who stood at the edge of the aisle, managed a gentle whisper. "Hey there, friend." Jax let out a subdued nicker, then, to Lisa's relief, moved on with his routine. He nudged the feed room door, slipped inside, and emerged with a single carrot. The retired couple exchanged amazed glances as they watched him stroll to Marley's stall. He dropped the carrot near the door, just like Lisa had seen him do nights before. Marley jerked her head up, startled by the surrounding watchers, but she recognized Jax, and some of her anxiety melted. Slowly, she inched forward to claim the treat. Jax waited, giving her ample space. The observers could barely contain their awe. A soft murmur rose among them, not in a disruptive way, but with reverence for what they were witnessing. Dr. Taylor whispered something about never having seen such intentional behavior. Karen looked tearful, her hands clasped tightly against her chest. Jax continued down the aisle, delivering small tokens to various stalls. An apple here, a brush there. He paused when a paint horse named Rossi stretched out his neck for a nuzzle. The crowd drew silent again, respecting the moment. Rossi was normally standoffish, yet he let Jax groom him gently through the bars. Lisa felt an odd swell of pride, as though this private miracle she had guarded so fiercely was now shining for a tiny, respectful audience. The visitors kept their distance, letting Jax lead the rhythm of the night. By 2 in the morning, Jax concluded his journey. He padded back to his stall and slipped inside. Only then did the group quietly gather in a corner of the aisle to exchange reactions. Each person spoke in hushed, awed voices, describing how they felt they'd witnessed something truly sacred. "It's one thing to hear rumors," Dr. Taylor said, her words trembling with emotion, "but to see it, I'm at a loss for how to describe it. Horses are empathic creatures, but Jax elevates that to an entirely new level." Lisa took in their expressions, relieved that her fears hadn't materialized. Jax had gone about his business, calmly, caringly, even with a small audience. As the group dispersed, they offered heartfelt thanks for the invitation. Though it was late, Lisa felt an invigorating sense of hope blossom in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, by sharing Jax's story with the right people in the right setting, the stables could help shape a narrative of compassion rather than spectacle. She quietly walked to Jax's stall, peering at him dozing in the dim light. He breathed softly, at peace, and Lisa whispered her gratitude. "Thank you, Jax, for letting them see who you really are." In the days that followed the night watch, Fairwood Stables found itself basking in a gentle glow of appreciation. The small group who had witnessed Jax's midnight ritual seemed changed by the experience, carrying a sense of reverence whenever they spoke of him. They assured Lisa and Jason that they would keep the story private, except in trusted circles, and that Jax deserved to remain free of invasive attention. Lisa felt the tension in her shoulders ease, grateful that at least a handful of outsiders now understood the delicate balance they were trying to protect. Marley continued to thrive under Jax's silent guardianship. Each night, he brought her a small offering, a carrot, an apple slice, sometimes even a wisp of alfalfa from the feed room. The mare's coat grew shinier, and she became more receptive to human touch, letting Karen groom her without trembling. Whenever Lisa entered Marley's stall, she noticed fewer signs of tension. The flick of an ear or a sidestep that once spelled alarm now seemed more like curiosity. Day by day, Marley's transformation served as living proof of Jax's calming power. With the growing sense of optimism, Lisa turned her thoughts to the future. The wave of unwanted visitors had slowed somewhat, thanks to Roy's vigilance and the newly posted signs. Still, she knew the calm might be temporary. A single viral social media post could ignite chaos all over again. She approached Jason one afternoon while he was mending a broken fence post near the back pasture. "We can't rely on luck forever," she began, squinting against the bright sun. "What if more trespassers show up, or the media returns in bigger numbers?" Jason straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "I've been thinking about that," he admitted. "Our sheriff's doing what he can, but the law can only go so far. Sooner or later, someone might sneak footage that goes viral. We need a plan, a real one." He patted the fence to test its stability. "Either we lock down this place like a fortress, which neither of us wants, or we find a way to share Jax's story on our own terms, maybe go public in a controlled, respectful way. That could douse the rumors and discourage the sneaky behavior," Lisa sighed, recalling Karen's earlier advice about shaping the narrative. The idea of going public still unnerved her. She pictured the quiet barn at night, the dim glow of a single bulb illuminating Jax's gentle movements. Could that sacred space remain intact if reporters and curious onlookers felt invited, even partially? "Let me think on it," she told Jason, her voice quiet. "I want to protect Jax, but I also don't want to spend the rest of my life chasing people off with a pitchfork." Over the following week, Lisa tested a small experiment. She invited 2 more trusted horse owners, friends of Karen's, to witness Jax's rounds in a manner similar to the initial night watch. Once again, Jax behaved as though untroubled by the discreet observers. He repeated his gentle routine, bringing Marley a treat and pausing at Willow's stall, among others. The visitors were moved to tears, and they left the barn promising to keep Jax's secret safe. Word of his open-heartedness, as someone called it, spread quietly among the local equine community, but it remained hushed, as though respecting an unspoken code. All the while, Lisa noticed a change in how her staff related to the horses. Stable hands who used to breeze through feeding time began offering a few extra moments of reassurance, a pat on a trembling shoulder or a gentle word to a skittish gelding. It was as if Jax's example reminded everyone that nurturing an animal meant more than meeting its physical needs. It was about emotional care, too. The ranch felt warmer, more unified, as though Jax's compassion was contagious. Late one evening, after finishing an exhausting day that included a minor health scare with one of the older stallions, Lisa settled into her cottage. She made a cup of tea and sank onto the sofa, the day's stress weighing heavily on her bones. Just as she closed her eyes, her phone buzzed with a call. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. Warily, she answered, bracing for a reporter's voice. Instead, she heard a warm, calm tone introduce itself as Dr. Paige Whitmore from the nearby Equine Research Center, the same place that had sent a letter weeks ago. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," Dr. Whitmore began, "but I've been reading more about your horse Jax, what I can find, that is, and I understand you've had reservations about any outside research." Lisa tensed, already formulating a polite refusal. But Dr. Whitmore rushed on. "I want you to know I respect your situation. We're not interested in sensationalizing anything. Our team specializes in the emotional health of horses, particularly those that exhibit unusual social behaviors. I believe there's a chance to learn something truly groundbreaking here, if and only if you're open to it." Her sincerity gave Lisa pause. The woman didn't sound pushy, more like someone genuinely fascinated by Jax's phenomenon in a scholarly way. "I appreciate your candor," Lisa said, "but my main priority is Jax's well-being. We won't force him into a lab setting or disrupt his natural routine." Dr. Whitmore reassured her that any proposed study would be observational, possibly involving minimal equipment such as hidden cameras, similar to what Lisa already used. They'd consult with Lisa and Dr. Taylor at every step, ensuring no harm came to Jax or the other horses. Before Lisa could respond, the researcher added one more detail. "You should know there's a growing community of equine scientists eager to explore how horses comfort one another. If the story of Jax keeps spreading without scientific context, the public might latch onto wild theories or sensational claims. A careful study could help guide the narrative responsibly, showing the world that empathy isn't unique to humans. It exists in these incredible animals, too." After a long silence, Lisa admitted she found the possibility intriguing. Part of her wanted people to see horses as sentient, empathetic beings. She'd always known they possessed deep emotional lives, but Jax was living proof that sometimes the behavior went far beyond anyone's expectations. "I'll think about it," she told Dr. Whitmore, promising to discuss it with Jason and Dr. Taylor. They ended the call on polite terms, and Lisa stared at her phone for a good 5 minutes, wrestling with a swirl of hopes and concerns. The next day, she relayed the conversation to Jason, Karen, and Dr. Taylor. Each reacted with cautious optimism. Jason, however, couldn't hide his wariness. "We can't let a bunch of strangers run wild in the barn," he insisted. "If this Dr. Whitmore is legit, we need a precise agreement." Karen suggested they draft specific guidelines for any research, strict limits on how many people could enter, what type of equipment they could use, and the hours they could observe. Dr. Taylor chimed in, reminding everyone that if Jax showed any sign of stress, they could cancel the whole thing. Lisa nodded at each point, her mind flitting to Marley, who had already come so far under Jax's influence. Would Marley's quiet transformation be part of the research? Would that spotlight benefit horses elsewhere, proving that rescue animals might heal faster with empathetic equine companions? Or could it ruin the fragile trust Marley had just begun to build? The thought weighed on Lisa, a constant tug-of-war between wanting to protect the sanctity of Fairwood stables and seeing a bigger picture for horse welfare. Finally, they agreed to set up a meeting with Dr. Whitmore on ranch property, a chance to discuss every concern face to face. Lisa penned a short email outlining the conditions: no media coverage, limited personnel, and an initial informal visit to establish rapport. Dr. Whitmore responded enthusiastically, suggesting she come alone first, bringing nothing more than a notepad. The date was set for the following week. In the days leading up to the meeting, Lisa caught herself feeling restless, as though awaiting a significant shift in her world. Sometimes, while grooming Jax in the warm afternoon sun, she would tell him about her reservations in a low, confiding tone. He would chew on his hay, occasionally swishing his tail or flicking an ear as though absorbing her words. Late at night, she'd watch him roam the barn, quietly praying that no matter what happened with the research center, he wouldn't lose the gentle mystery that made him so unique. When Dr. Whitmore's car pulled up one mild morning, Lisa greeted her with a cautious smile. The woman, an older figure with graying hair tied in a neat bun, wore sensible boots and a kind expression. She glanced around the ranch as though trying to drink in every detail: rustic fences, horses lazily grazing, the barn silhouetted against a crystal sky. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, voice soft but assured. "I can't tell you how excited I am, but I promise to respect your boundaries." Lisa guided her through the stables, pointing out the various horses, including Marley, who regarded Dr. Whitmore with gentle suspicion. When they reached Jack's, he lifted his head from the hay and studied the newcomer with calm curiosity. Lisa felt her chest tighten, hoping he would sense Dr. Whitmore's good intentions. Tentatively, the researcher held out a hand, and Jax stretched his neck forward to sniff her palm. A ghost of a smile crossed Dr. Whitmore's face. "It's a privilege to meet you, Jax," she murmured. "I've heard remarkable stories." For the next hour, they sat on hay bales near the arena, discussing possible methods of documentation. Dr. Whitmore stressed that any observational study could be done quietly, with cameras that wouldn't interfere with Jax's freedom. The data would be used to develop a scholarly paper, not to spark a media frenzy. Throughout, Lisa weighed each point carefully, occasionally locking eyes with Jason, who seemed to appreciate the woman's forthright manner. They agreed that nothing would proceed until they saw how Jax reacted to the new setup. If he seemed agitated, they would stop immediately. Dr. Whitmore readily consented, jotted notes, and nodded often. After she left, Lisa felt a flood of mixed emotions. She wandered back into the barn, finding Jax in his usual stall, tugging at the remains of his mid-morning hay. She reached up to stroke his muzzle and whispered, "I hope we're doing right by you." Jax exhaled softly, leaning into her touch with that familiar warmth. For a moment, Lisa allowed herself to believe that whatever lay ahead, research or newfound attention, Fairwood Stables could remain the tranquil heart of Jax's remarkable empathy. And if science might help protect him and prove his worth in a world so hungry for spectacle, then perhaps, just perhaps, the risk was worth it. A week after Dr. Whitmore's initial visit, she returned to Fairwood Stables with 2 small cameras designed for low-light observation. Each was roughly the size of a smartphone and could be affixed above a stall door without disturbing the horses. Lisa and Jason watched with guarded curiosity as Dr. Whitmore installed them, ensuring the angles were set to capture Jax's nocturnal wanderings. The researcher was methodical and gentle, pausing whenever a horse seemed uneasy. Marley, still skittish, tossed her head at the sight of the unfamiliar device, but settled when Jax ambled over from his stall as if to investigate. Seeing him calm, Marley relaxed, nudging her muzzle against the doorframe as though accepting the new addition. That evening, as Lisa made her rounds, the barn felt unusually quiet. In place of the hush of secrecy they'd once cultivated, there was now a sense of watchful anticipation. She suspected everyone, the staff, Karen, Dr. Whitmore, was eager to see if Jax would behave differently under recorded observation. Would he still deliver carrots to Marley or linger by Willow's stall if he sensed the slight whir of a camera overhead? Lisa worried the presence of technology might rob the night of its magic. When midnight arrived, the barn lay cloaked in moonlight, silver beams spilling across the aisle. Lisa and Jason hovered near the feed room, alongside Dr. Whitmore, who monitored a small laptop that wirelessly connected to the cameras. They dimmed the interior lights, hoping Jax wouldn't feel intruded upon. Roy, stationed outside, kept watch for any late-night interlopers. At first, no one moved. Then came the faint click of Jax's stall door. On the monitor, Lisa saw the black gelding step into view, his ears pricked forward, eyes alert. Relief fluttered through her. So far, he was acting like himself. Jax paused at Marley's door, lowering his muzzle in a quiet greeting. Marley shifted, whickering softly. Lisa felt her anxiety melt a bit. Doctor. Whitmore tapped a key on her laptop, adjusting the camera angle so it captured the scene in crisp night vision. Jax slipped into the feed room, just as he'd always done, emerged with a carrot, and dropped it gently inside Marley's stall. On the laptop screen, Lisa could see the mare accept it willingly, no longer cowering. Even though Lisa stood only steps away from the actual moment, watching it through the camera's lens gave her a fresh perspective. The image felt strangely intimate, like witnessing a private conversation between two souls. For the next half hour, Jax repeated his ritual, distributing small tokens to a few horses, offering a warm muzzle nudge to others. Willow, dozing in her stall, flicked her ears happily when he arrived. Clara, the older mare, lifted her head in recognition and seemed soothed by his presence. The barn's gentle nighttime rhythm flowed on, entirely unbroken by the cameras or the watchers. Dr. Whitmore jotted note after note, her eyes alight with fascination. Occasionally, she asked Lisa a whispered question. Had Jax always visited certain horses first? Did he ever skip a stall? Lisa answered as best she could, grateful that his routine felt undisturbed. After Jax returned to his stall, Dr. Whitmore turned off the cameras and expressed her excitement in hushed tones. "This is extraordinary. I've never seen documented evidence of a horse tending to others with such consistency. His choices seem purposeful, almost empathetic." She showed Lisa a few replay clips, highlighting subtle details. The careful way Jax lingered with a mare showing signs of agitation, or the brief moment when he seemed to wait for eye contact from a horse before offering a treat. "We can do a proper analysis later, but it's clear he's reading their body language and responding," Dr. Whitmore concluded. Over the subsequent days, Dr. Whitmore ran the cameras each night, capturing hours of footage. She maintained a respectful distance, never flooding the barn with invasive lights or large equipment. Lisa noticed that Marley, once reluctant around anything new, grew curious about the little camera perched above her stall. Twice, the mare craned her neck to sniff at the device, but when Jax appeared and calmly snorted, she went right back to munching her hay, as though assured it posed no danger. With each passing night, Lisa relaxed further, seeing that Jax appeared unbothered by the silent observer. Meanwhile, word of Dr. Whitmore's involvement trickled through the local equine community, though in an understated manner. She refused interviews, politely redirecting inquiries to Lisa or Jason. The stable hands, at first wary of having a researcher around, soon found her presence comforting. She asked thoughtful questions about the horses, took genuine interest in each resident's personality, and even helped an overwhelmed stable hand wrap a sprained fetlock on a fractious colt. As the study progressed, Dr. Whitmore's unwavering gentleness and sense of purpose endeared her to nearly everyone on the ranch. Karen, who was still guiding Marley's rehabilitation, assisted with collecting relevant data. She noted Marley's daily improvements, sleep patterns, appetite, willingness to approach humans, and cross-referenced them with any nighttime interactions Jax offered. They discovered a fascinating correlation. On nights when Jax spent longer with Marley, the mare showed heightened social behaviors the following day, such as greeting other horses through the paddock fence rather than standing apart. "It's like he's giving her an extra boost of confidence," Karen observed. Lisa beamed whenever she heard such remarks, proud that Jax's compassion reached beyond the darkness of night. Of course, not every development was smooth. One damp evening, a sudden thunderstorm rolled across the property, rattling the barn's roof with torrential rain. Lightning flickered through the sky, and thunder boomed so loudly that several horses spooked in their stalls. Lisa and the others rushed in with flashlights, trying to calm them. Marley, who still carried lingering fears, reared in panic, nearly striking Karen. For a tense minute, the mare threatened to bolt. Then Jax, as if summoned by the commotion, pushed open his stall door and hurried down the aisle. Lisa watched, heart pounding, as he approached Marley's stall. A brilliant flash of lightning lit the barn, and Marley quivered. Jax pressed his muzzle through the bars, ignoring the crack of thunder. Within seconds, Marley's frantic motions slowed, and she lowered her head. Lisa and Karen exchanged awed glances, holding their breath as Jax exhaled a calming breath in Marley's direction. The mare's ears swiveled toward him, and she let out a shaky snort. Outside, wind howled and rain pelted the metal roof. Yet Marley stood grounded, comforted by Jax's presence. Eventually, the storm waned, and the barn's tension eased. The stable hands regrouped, dripping from the rain, and offered each horse an extra pat. As Lisa peered across the aisle at Jax, she realized she couldn't imagine a study that fully captured a moment like that. The intangible bond forged in a crisis. After the storm subsided, Dr. Whitmore played back the cameras. Though the heavy rain blurred some footage, she captured enough to see Jax's determined approach toward Marley's stall. He was responding not just to her fear, but to the environment's chaos, she remarked. It's almost as if he understands his role is to soothe. Lisa nodded, thinking of how Jax had done the same for anxious horses time and time again, well before any cameras were installed. She quietly hoped these recordings might prove to the wider world that a horse's emotional intuition was a real and potent force. As the days progressed, Dr. Whitmore mentioned the possibility of writing a preliminary article for an academic journal. Nothing flashy, just an initial case study to share among fellow researchers. She showed Lisa excerpts of her notes, lines describing Jax's route through the barn, theories about how he selected which horses to visit first, observations about how even the barn cat seemed calmer when Jax roamed at night. Lisa felt a rising mixture of pride and trepidation. Pride because Jax's empathy would be recognized. Trepidation because once published, the article could reach a larger audience, rekindling the media firestorm they'd worked so hard to quell. Jason echoed her concerns one balmy afternoon as they mulched flower beds near the barn. I appreciate Dr. Whitmore's thoroughness, but let's not kid ourselves, he muttered. If that paper gains traction, the phone calls could start again. We'll have to brace ourselves. Lisa wiped sweat from her brow. I know, she admitted, glancing at the barn door. At least we can trust Whitmore not to sensationalize. She's been respectful every step of the way. Jason agreed, but his knotted brow revealed a lingering fear of losing their fragile peace. Through it all, Jax's routine stayed beautifully consistent. He greeted each day with leisurely grazing, participated in gentle exercise sessions with Lisa, and saved his acts of kindness for the dead of night. Even on evenings when Dr. Whitmore didn't record, Lisa sometimes slipped into the loft, marveling anew at his tender gestures. Marley was now well on the road to recovery, her once sunken eyes shining with a spark of life. In Lisa's mind, that alone justified the risk of letting Dr. Whitmore observe. If sharing Jax's story responsibly could inspire better care for neglected horses elsewhere, perhaps the growing attention was worth it. Yet Lisa knew their journey was far from over. There were always more storms on the horizon, literal and metaphorical. The ranch might face renewed intrusions or swirling rumors once the research went public. But standing in the barn aisle beside Jax late one evening, she felt a calm resolve. She brushed a hand along his neck, feeling his warm body lean into her touch. "We'll take this one day at a time," she whispered, watching as he turned his head, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the stable lights. In that gaze, she saw a quiet promise that, no matter how the world changed around them, Jax's devotion to caring for those who needed him would never waver. For a few precious weeks, life at Fairwood Stables seemed to settle into a harmonious rhythm. Dr. Whitmore continued her discreet observations, capturing Jax's nightly wanderings without disrupting the ranch's calm. Lisa found herself almost enjoying the routine of checking the cameras each morning, scrolling through footage with Dr. Whitmore and marveling at every subtle gesture Jax made. On the videos, the black geldings seemed to glide through the barn as though guided by a sixth sense, lingering longer beside horses who most needed comfort. Marley's progress became a highlight of the recordings, demonstrating how Jax's nightly visits helped transform her from a frightened, emaciated mare into a curious, companionable horse, unafraid to greet visitors by day. Even so, Lisa felt a low hum of anxiety whenever she considered the future. Dr. Whitmore had already drafted an outline for a preliminary paper, a simple case study meant for a small circle of equine researchers. The content was clinical enough, documenting Jax's consistent routine, the physical improvements in horses like Marley, and the stable-wide reduction in stress behaviors. But Lisa knew that even a modest paper could spark new interest. One over-enthusiastic scholar might mention it online, a journalist might pick up the thread, and soon enough, the stable would once again be inundated by curiosity seekers. She kept replaying Jason's warning about the phone calls starting anew. Meanwhile, the rest of the staff seemed torn between amazement and apprehension. Karen, who'd originally brought Marley, was thrilled that rescue horses might benefit from such findings. "Think about all the Marleys out there," she said one breezy afternoon as they brushed the mare in her stall. "If Jax's story encourages people to rehabilitate horses more gently, it could save so many lives." Lisa nodded, wanting to share Karen's hope. Yet part of her remained guarded. Protecting Jax's sanctuary still felt like her most important duty. She couldn't bear the thought of him becoming a spectacle in a world hungry for viral sensations. That internal conflict gnawed at Lisa more than ever one Sunday morning when Dr. Whitmore called with unexpected news. She had received an invitation to speak at a small regional equine conference, an informal gathering of veterinarians, behaviorists, and horse trainers. The organizers had heard rumors of her ongoing study and extended a slot for a short presentation. "It's a chance to present Jax's case to people who genuinely care about horse welfare," Dr. Whitmore said, her tone optimistic. "They're not tabloid reporters or sensationalist YouTubers. They're experts who might help refine our understanding." Lisa's stomach twisted. She recognized the potential value, but fear churned at the thought of even a specialized group learning about Jax. She took the matter to Jason and Karen, laying out Dr. Whitmore's invitation. Jason pursed his lips, mulling over how such a presentation might ripple outward. Karen, however, looked excited. "This could be the right crowd," she argued. "Veterinarians and trainers won't be looking to exploit Jax. They'll be keen on the science, on how his behavior might improve equine therapy methods." Lisa tapped her fingers on the office desk, envisioning the best and worst outcomes. Ultimately, they agreed to trust Dr. Whitmore's judgment. At least the audience would be professional, and Dr. Whitmore would emphasize privacy. If it helps more horses like Marley, Lisa conceded. Maybe it's worth the risk. The following week, Dr. Whitmore prepared her talk, double-checking that no identifying details about the ranch would be revealed beyond a vague description of a private stable. She included short video clips that captured Jax's nightly rounds, carefully editing out any barn signs or staff faces. The final presentation showed only glimpses of a thoughtful black gelding coaxing anxious horses into calmer states. Lisa and Jason previewed the slides, breathing a collective sigh of relief when they saw how discreet and respectful the content looked. On the day of the conference, Dr. Whitmore left for the nearby event center, promising to update them as soon as her session ended. That evening, Lisa tried to distract herself with chores, but her thoughts kept drifting to the conference room where Dr. Whitmore would be speaking. Roy, stationed by the barn entrance, offered a reassuring nod. "We're locked up tight if any weirdos show," he said. Lisa managed to chuckle, grateful for his constant vigilance. As the sun sank, she ambled to the paddock where Jax grazed. She stroked his glossy neck, telling him softly, "You might become famous again, but we're going to keep you safe." Jax flicked an ear, as though acknowledging the promise. Around 9 that night, Lisa's phone buzzed. Dr. Whitmore's voice spilled out, breathless with excitement. It was amazing. The audience was enthralled, but in the best possible way. Trainers and vets were asking thoughtful questions. Nobody pried for personal details. People want to collaborate, maybe expand the concept of horse companionship in rehab settings. I think this could be huge." She sounded hopeful rather than alarmed. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "Glad it went well," she said, her shoulders easing. For once, it seemed that others in the equine world understood the delicate nature of Jax's gift. Still, not all storms come from predictable directions. Early the next morning, Karen burst into Lisa's office, face pale. She clutched her phone, which displayed a social media post from a local tabloid-style blog. "You have to see this," Karen said, voice tight. The blog had published a sensational headline, "Secret Ranch Hides Miracle Horse, Exclusive Video Soon." The article claimed an anonymous source had proof of a horse that roamed at night, healing other animals. It teased that footage would be released in days, promising to reveal the location. Lisa's stomach lurched. "So much for our small bubble," she muttered. They scrambled to find out who might have leaked the story. None of the stable hands admitted involvement, and Dr. Whitmore was as horrified as they were when she saw the post. Even the guests who had quietly witnessed Jax's rounds swore they had never shared unauthorized videos. Yet someone out there either had faked footage or somehow captured real images. The threat of exposure loomed again. Jason slammed a hand on the office desk in frustration. "If they really do have video," he growled, "it could be from a trespasser. We've had enough break-ins. Maybe we missed one." Roy redoubled his patrols, but the sense of dread only grew. Lisa spent hours each night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, picturing hordes of strangers converging on Fairwood stables the moment the article's promised video surfaced. She'd been through a smaller version of this already, chasing off intrepid reporters and curious thrill-seekers. This time, the potential scale felt larger, especially if a sensational blog whipped people into a frenzy. She confided her worries to Dr. Whitmore, who tried to reassure her. "Maybe they have nothing but rumors," the researcher suggested. "Sometimes tabloids bluff to gain traffic." Lisa wished she could believe that. Late one evening, as she paced the barn aisle, Lisa felt a flutter of panic rising like bile in her throat. She stared at Jax's stall, imagining a camera pointed at him from some hidden vantage. The thought made her feel ill. If the stable became overrun, they might have no choice but to secure Jax behind sturdy locks, denying him the freedom to roam that defined his very essence. She sank onto a bale of straw, pressing her palms to her temples. Footsteps approached. Karen, who had come to check on Marley. "Lisa," she said softly, "take a breath. You're not alone in this." Lisa nodded, struggling to calm her thoughts. Jax, hearing their voices, ambled to the edge of his stall. He reached out with his muzzle, and Lisa rose to meet him. The horse gently bumped her shoulder. A wave of tenderness washed over her, recalling every moment of comfort he'd brought to others. The idea of restricting his nightly journeys felt like betraying his trust, yet she also knew that letting him roam freely was a risk if more intruders came. She could practically envision a secret camera capturing his movements, posted online for tens of thousands of strangers. 2 days later, the blog released a short teaser clip. To Lisa's dismay, it showed a blurred nighttime view of a horse moving inside a dim barn. The angle was poor, but from the silhouette, she had no doubt it was Jax. Superimposed text promised a full reveal in less than a week. Comments underneath the post exploded with speculation, some calling it a hoax, others vowing to identify the location. Lisa's heart clenched. She hoped they wouldn't recognize the barn layout or the glimpse of farmland visible in the background. Yet the internet had a knack for crowdsourcing details. Jason wasted no time. He consulted an attorney friend about filing a cease and desist letter against the blog if it posted more footage. Roy ramped up security, enlisting a part-time guard for the overnight shift. Even Dr. Whitmore offered to speak out publicly, clarifying that any sensational claims were unauthorized. Through it all, Lisa felt as though she was preparing for a siege, each day wondering when the gates might finally burst. Despite the looming threat, Jax carried on as normal, pacing the stalls at night, comforting a tense mare or offering treats to a lonely gelding. Marley continued her steady recovery, stepping out of her stall each morning with growing confidence. Watching them, Lisa understood how precious Jax's freedom was, how it allowed him to be exactly who he needed to be. That knowledge fueled her resolve. She wouldn't let fear destroy what they'd built here. She would find a way to shield Jax from the worst of human curiosity. Standing at the threshold of the barn, she gazed out at the rolling pasture, inhaling the scent of hay and fresh air, determined to fight for the peace that Jax quietly created every night. In the days following the blog's teaser clip, a restless tension settled over Fairwood Stables. The staff moved with a sense of urgency, triple-checking locks and scanning the perimeter for unfamiliar silhouettes. Every ring of the phone set Lisa's nerves on edge, half expecting to hear demands or prying inquiries. Jason arranged for Roy and the additional guard to coordinate their patrols, hoping that a strong presence would dissuade nighttime intruders. Meanwhile, Dr. Whitmore expressed concern that if panic spread, it might affect Jax's routine. Each morning, Lisa examined the cameras, half afraid to find some new trespasser captured on film. Yet night after night, Jax performed his usual rounds. His unwavering calm reminded Lisa that despite the turmoil outside, the heart of the barn still pulsed with empathy and unwavering warmth. One afternoon, Karen hurried to Lisa with unsettling news. The blog had posted a cryptic update announcing an imminent live broadcast. The accompanying text hinted that they had identified the ranch's location, urging viewers to tune in for the big reveal. Alarmed, Lisa and Jason convened an emergency staff meeting, urging everyone to remain vigilant. Roy proposed a plan to block off certain roads leading to the property, but Jason shook his head, pointing out that it could draw more suspicion. Instead, they agreed to keep an eye on the main gate and intensify perimeter checks. Tension mounted as the so-called broadcast date approached. Lisa felt as though an invisible timer had been set, counting down toward a truly inevitable confrontation with the outside world Jax had never asked for. Determined not to let fear paralyze them, Lisa and Jason prepared for the worst. Roy recruited a few trusted friends, all local ranchers, to stand by as extra sets of eyes. Even Dr. Whitmore volunteered to help, explaining that her presence might deter those seeking sensational material. Meanwhile, a hush fell over the barn at night, as if the horses sensed looming uncertainty. Jax's routine persisted, though Lisa's heart pounded whenever she heard the slightest rustle outside. On the eve of the advertised broadcast, she hardly slept, haunted by visions of cameras flashing in the darkness. A profound dread mingled with a stubborn resolve. No matter who arrived, she would protect Jax's right to roam free. If a showdown loomed, she intended to face it head-on. She was ready now. At precisely 9 the next evening, the blog's live stream began. The footage was shaky and dim, showing two figures driving down a gravel road. Their commentary brimmed with dramatic claims. They were on the verge of exposing a clandestine horse miracle. Online viewers ballooned by the minute, floodlighting the chat with theories and demands. Then, without warning, the stream cut to black. The watchers erupted in confusion, hurling accusations of technical failure. In truth, Roy and his friends had intercepted the intruders at a closed gate 2 miles from Fairwood Stables, politely but firmly blocking their path. With no story to capture, the would-be broadcasters left in frustration, yet the brief broadcast planted fresh rumors and mysteries. Social media exploded with speculation about what secrets the ranch was hiding. Although Fairwood Stables emerged unscathed from that night, the surge in attention was undeniable. Calls began pouring in again, and the gate was pestered by curious passers-by snapping photos from a distance. Several turned up claiming they simply wanted to volunteer or donate. But Lisa suspected they hoped for a glimpse of Jax. Roy's new recruits helped maintain order, guiding any well-meaning individuals away. Inside the barn, the horses remained largely undisturbed, continuing their peaceful routines. Jax carried on as though oblivious to the commotion swirling outside the ranch's fences. Still, Lisa sensed his heightened awareness during night rounds, as if he too felt the weight of unseen eyes. Despite the chaos, each dawn revealed Jax returning to his stall, unruffled, after another quiet vigil of compassion and unwavering resolve. Dr. Whitmore, alarmed by the blog's attempts at exposure, resolved to publish her preliminary findings sooner than planned. She hoped a measured, scientific account might overshadow rumor-driven speculation. She worked closely with Lisa, selecting unobtrusive video stills that showcased Jax's empathy without identifying the ranch. Her draft paper described an unnamed stable featuring a horse with extraordinary nighttime behaviors. It championed the importance of respecting equine autonomy and forging deeper connections between horses under stress. Lisa read the final version with quiet relief. The text held no sensational claims or hints that might draw reckless attention. Instead, it spoke of equine kindness as a universal phenomenon, urging readers to seek it in their own barns. Submitting the paper felt like a counterbalance to the frenzied rumors swirling online and fear. A few days after the paper's submission, the blog updated its site with yet another taunting headline: "We found the miracle horse, proof coming soon." But as the days wore on, their promised reveal never materialized. It seemed Roy's interception had robbed them of any usable footage, and the blog's sensational claims fell flat without fresh content. Online interest cooled, and comments turned skeptical, accusing the blog of fabricating hoaxes for clicks. While a few die-hard believers persisted, the wave of public fervor gradually ebbed. Lisa breathed easier with each quiet dawn. She offered a silent thanks for the small miracle that their watchers had been thwarted. If the stable could endure that storm, perhaps it could weather any future squalls. Jax remained none the wiser, as unflappable and tranquil as ever. Once calm returned, Lisa took stock of how much had changed since the day she first discovered Jax's midnight escapades. The barn was still the same structure of wood and straw, and the horses still huffed at feeding times and whinnied for turnout. Yet a subtle bond now linked everyone who worked there. Even the new stable hands, hired during the tumult, approached their duties with gentler hands and kinder voices. Marley had all but recovered, cantering around the paddock with a newfound grace that belied her harrowing past. Karen marveled at the transformation, attributing much of it to Jax's nightly reassurances. Dr. Whitmore, too, had settled into a pattern of quiet visits, reviewing camera footage and scribbling observations. In those small, everyday moments, the ranch thrummed with renewed purpose. One crisp afternoon, Lisa spotted Marley trotting beside Jax during turnout, their movements synchronized in a playful dance. That evening, Karen announced that Marley had gained enough weight and confidence to be gently rehomed if an ideal adopter emerged. Though the thought of parting with her stung, Lisa realized it signaled success. Marley was no longer the trembling horse from the auction. She was a testament to resilience, guided partly by Jax's nightly compassion. Karen promised to find a perfect match, ensuring Marley would continue to thrive. Lisa, brushing a tear from her eye, felt gratitude overwhelm her. This was what Fairwood Stables existed for, to offer sanctuary and a fresh start. Watching Marley and Jax side by side, she felt an unshakable certainty that goodness had completely prevailed. In the quiet that followed, Lisa often reflected on the remarkable journey she had shared with Jax. He remained the same gentle soul who wandered the barn at midnight, placing apples or brushes at each stall, comforting horses in ways no human fully understood. The ranch had faced trials, media hype, intrusions, unrelenting curiosity, but each challenge had only strengthened Lisa's resolve. Now, as evening shadows stretched across the paddocks, she would sometimes linger in the loft, watching him embark on his sacred rounds. Each soft hoofstep reminded her that true wonder required no fanfare, no cameras flashing in the dark. It flourished in kindness freely given. And so Jax carried on, unburdened by fame, weaving invisible threads of calm and hope through every stall, night after healing night, and renewed faith.